Greetings and salutations, listener. It is I, Eric J. Chucky, joined, as always, by the boy. Here we are on time.
Yeah, we remembered that we have a podcast this week. We've only been doing it for like 5 years.
We almost forgot. And that's why this week's podcast is on Druids and not a gauntlet. But don't you worry, listener. The gauntlet will be returning next week.
And we have a fun idea for it. But this week, Druids.
This week, Druids. And honestly, the whole fucking time we've been doing 5e review, we've been talking shit on two things. Me half-elves and Druids.
Also you.
Yes, also mostly me. And I don't hate the Druid, I just can't play the Druid, and I think they're undertuned. And it's the kind of tuning, they're poorly tuned.
That's better. They're not undertuned. They are powerful.
They're overtuned for one specific scenario.
That's not even true. They are, all in all, pound for pound, probably the most powerful class in the game.
Once you get all their shit off the ground, yeah.
Like, it's not at level 2,
no.
But like by level 6, maybe 5.
By level 6, they can be pretty strong. They don't get broken until about 14, depending on your circle.
I don't know that that's true. I'm prepared to debate that with you.
Okay.
Because they are, pound for pound, one of the best classes in the game because they have an excellent chassis. They have decent hit points, not caster hit points. They have good armor and weapon proficiencies. They're a full casting class with the best spell list.
I don't know about that.
It has the 3 most broken spells on it, so...
I don't know if I agree with broken spells, but...
And they have a feature which essentially just gives them the ability to off-tank and a second hit point pool 2 times a day. And that's at level 2. They are, pound for pound, probably the strongest class. They're not my favorite class, because you're right. The features that they have are good. Some of them are in the wrong places in the class.
I feel like, you say pound for pound, I say when run with maximum or at least optimum efficiency, Druid is the best class mechanically. But we're talking about machine-like efficiency for your Druid. I mean, and hey, a lot of tables out there, you got to worry about those min-maxers. And a lot of DMs out there just aren't good enough to run a game without banning Healing Word because it's broken.
It's not. That's the part that bothers me. It's really very much not. It is overtuned in the early levels and falls off a cliff after level 6. I have a character who I've played from level 1 to level 11 at this point, and he's a Healing Word the whole damn time, and I haven't used it since level 7.
I mean, I had a...
At all. I'm never going to retrade it because it's a central part of who the character is, but I could. He never uses it.
Same thing happened with my Cleric. And healing in general in D&D, so long as your DM is capable, and I'm not saying like really good, I mean capable, because I'm not the best DM, and I've managed... You don't need the traditional party. You don't need a healer.
Now, that changes what you can reasonably confront your party with.
Sure.
But
you're not also going to throw against a party who doesn't have a cleric 100 ghosts. Or you're just an asshole.
Or you are, and you're the kind of DM who doesn't vary up what's there, who doesn't vary up the campaign based on your players' play and input, at which point you suck.
Yeah, you're just being a DM to, ejaculate your power fantasy all over some people. Or you're new.
Or you're running modules where what's there is fixed.
That's a different story. That's a different situation. But as I'm given to understand it, a lot of those modules say things like, hey, if your players can't hack this, maybe fudge it some.
Yeah, But anyway, that's not the podcast.
Yeah, we're kind of getting off track here. Just sometimes as DMs and players, it feels good to rant without losing Reddit karma. Druids, they turn into animals, they cast spells, and goddamn if that isn't about it. Until you get into their circles.
So until level 2.
Right.
Actually, no, you know what? I'm being sassy. But this class is remarkably skeleton-like.
It really is.
Without, so the classes we've gone over in detail before, and what I know of the classes that come after this, having seen and played a couple of them, have a lot of intrinsic features. With the circle, with the the customization feature, whatever they call it, being sort of a sauce you add things to sort of personalize. The Druid is remarkably skeleton-like without their circle.
They're a lot like Cleric in that sense. Honestly, I think the Druid might have a little more meat on its bones. I would argue in places it has too much fucking meat on its bones. It depends on what you're trying to do with your character and how you approach character creation. Druid is a hot-button class, if I may.
He just really doesn't like turning into animals.
I really don't. It's never...
He just really doesn't like turning into animals.
Trying to organize my thoughts here.
I'm sassing to give you time.
You are. I have a hard time conceiving of a space and a situation where my full caster class wants to turn into an animal that can't cast spells. I have a limited number of times to do this animal shape thing.
Mm-hmm.
I am depriving my party of that support, of that healing and whatever damage.
In favor of usually another frontline fighter.
In favor of another frontline fighter. And they're not even that great. Like, the animals you can turn into, unless you're specific, circles, specifically the Circle of the Moon, the animals you can turn into until,
they never get good.
8th level, they're okay.
They're always pretty well under your effective rating.
Right.
Intentionally, because it's meant to be like a power that's used in support. It's not necessarily meant to be like a frontline combat power. It's meant for, scouting and...
Well, and that's brilliant, and I like that. I think it would have been better pulled off with some exclusive Druid spells. Here's why. Because you have got so much power gating in the shape-shifting, because you're absolutely right. Especially once you get higher levels and have bigger monsters to turn into, bigger animals, I should say, suddenly you have 100 hit points to play with out of nowhere. Now, you can only do certain things while you have this 100 hit points, but you've got it.
Yeah, if you're a Circle of the Moon Druid at a very early level, and even if you're not, at a mid-level, you can turn into a giant elk. That's a huge-sized deer.
Mm-hmm.
With, a fuckload of hit points. If you're a Circle of the Moon Druid, I think you have to be to get high enough, or I imagine it would be a much higher level. You can turn into a fucking Brontosaurus!
Yeah.
That's amazing! That's awesome! Even at, level 2, you can turn into a wolf.
Wolves are okay. They don't have much in the way of hit points.
No, but they have excellent tactical abilities.
Yeah, they do have the pack tactics. They don't do a whole lot of damage on by their own. But, the pack tactics, getting people advantage, if you manage to knock shit prone, that's helpful. But I feel like, honestly, we can save a lot of the how do we fix this chatter for the end, when maybe the listener understands a bit better, different things about different druids.
Okay.
So let's fold into it. Druids are not clerics, so they only have a few subclasses.
Yeah, they have 7?
Honestly, they're a little underserved, I feel.
Yeah, you know what? I thought Rogue was underserved, and then I looked at what Druid has, and never mind.
And honestly, I feel part of the problem is fucking wild shape.
Of course you do. You don't like wild shapes, so when all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. When you hate one part of a class so much, every time there's a problem with the class, your brain goes, it has to be this. This has to be the problem.
Oh, the boy. I'll save it for the end. It's fine. So, let's start with the Circle of Dreams. Circle of Dreams has a lot to do with fairy and dream time. You get extra healing abilities, you get a bunch of teleportation, you get a stealth camp. Later levels, I believe 14, you get access to the spells Dream, Scrying, and a Hearthstone teleport.
Yeah, that just takes you back to the last place you went to sleep. That's neat.
Yeah, those are all really cool. Maybe a little underwhelming, but No, it's pretty good overall.
Yeah, I would say of all of these, I was only underwhelmed by one Druid circle.
Sure.
The rest seemed fine. I will say that, like, as much as I'm giving white shit, the wild shape feature isn't how I would have implemented something like that. I think it's fine. I don't have a problem with it. But I find it notable that many of the circles that came out after the PHB very much focus on taking your wild shape and using it for something else.
Yeah. I have feelings on that. We'll get to them. Let's talk Druid. The Circle of Land is a more spellcasting focused Druid out of the PHB.
Yeah, it very much makes them into, like, it takes them from just like a nature cleric with wild shape attached and really mixes in some wizard flavor. They get like a version of Arcane Recovery, and they get another cantrip, and they get really good bonus spells as well on top of Druid's already excellent spell list.
They do have a pretty damn good spell list. Circle of the Moon is the one we mentioned earlier. They're your shape-shifting Druid.
If you really like the idea of turning into turning into beasts, turning into animals, if you want to be fucking manimal, this is how you do it. And it does it well.
My only issues are the later level parts of Circle of the Moon, where you turn into an elemental.
And then you get Alter Self. At will, as your capstone. Otherwise known as, I played a Changeling, I've had that since level 1.
I mean, like, yeah. Now, Changelings came out after Circle of the Moon, but as we're often prone to say here, everybody bitches about Ranger. Why is that not fixed?
Yeah, like, that is a terrible capstone. Circle of the Moon starts out real good and has a just god-awful capstone.
Because I've played a Changeling. And, like, yeah, that's a pretty handy ability, but without, like, a Hat of Disguise or something equivalent, it's not actually as useful as you think it is. I mean, period. And you can't go acting a fool, otherwise people will have a reason to suspect you're messed up. You're not the person you're portraying yourself as.
So it's just not...
That's not...
It's incredibly flavorful, but mechanically, that's just a terrible capstone.
Circle of the Shepherd is strong. They're your Conjuration Wizard Druid.
They are probably the strongest circle. They are the mechanically best choice in terms of sheer mechanical power.
This is one of those things that as a DM, you actually have to change things. Much like I'm playing a party without a healer, if you have somebody who is a Conjuration Wizard or who is a Circle of the Shepherd Druid, you need to modify your encounters in order to make them still feel challenging when you've got a guy who's going to summon 100 bees to bother you.
Like, the Circle of the Shepherd Druid will... You need to have ads with your bosses. Because if you just have one big boss, the Circle of the Shepherd Druid is going to curb stomp them.
Especially because all of those bees or crows or what have you will have extra hit points and do extra damage.
And get healing
yeah.
whenever they're near the druid. It is a very powerful... Now, it's powerful when paired with the obvious spells that go with it. You could fuck it up, I guess, but why would you do that? But yeah, it's a really powerful build. Probably the strongest. And notably, it's the one druid I've seen played to a great extent. So that might be a little bit of sampling bias that I've seen the awesome shit the Circle of Shepherd Druid can do. But I don't think it is. I think it's probably just the best. And they have a really good capstone. Again, in sharp contrast to Circle of the Moon's god-awful capstone. But it's also really good. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, though.
No. Circle of Spores is next. They're a Necromancer Druid by way of Cordyceps fungus. You get...
Dope-ass concept.
Yeah. My only issue with it is that, again, it's so specific. Like, you're a zombie spores druid. I would like a fungal druid that isn't inherently tied to zombies, but I do like the concept in general. I figure you could get at least 2 decent, distinct characters out of it, in one player. But only 2. But they've got some cool stuff. They've got amazing capstone. You got a bunch of self buffs. Let me go ahead and just pull it up real quick here. You get immunity to blindness, deafness, being frightened, being poisoned, and any critical hit against you counts as a normal hit instead.
Which is not something that 5e undead get, but those are basically 3.5 undead immunity.
Yeah, it's super fucking cool.
Which is really cool, because you're like a spread out fungal being now, which is neat as shit.
Yeah, I like it. I like fungus as an aesthetic choice. So I was really excited to see this druid. Not my favorite, but I do think they did the concept really well. Twilight is kind of like the anti-necromancer druid while still dealing necrotic damage. They murder undead. They talk to ghosts. They do like ethereal walking and stuff.
Yeah, they're the ones that didn't blow my skirt up.
Really?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with them. It's just, I don't know. I didn't like them. There's nothing mechanically I could put my finger on. It just didn't. I think it's because it started in a place that I liked and then went somewhere else with it.
It really did go in like it seems underwhelming when you think about it. They're like, oh, this is the Twilight Druid, the Druid of the Harvest. Okay, they're going to be super undead focused, like the other half of a Necromancer coin from the Circle of Spores. And then they're not. They go very counter undead, and they're very like more like ghosty. I took it as more of a tribal druid. I am going to talk to the spirits. Because you can also talk to animal ghosts with the Speak with Dead they get. Yeah,
which is something Speak with Dead doesn't usually do. And you know what? That's really cool. And that interpretation of it is like a very, like, a literal, like, a druid.
Yeah.
Like the kind of motherfucker what would hang out at Stonehenge.
Yeah. I got to a lot of great concepts thinking about that.
Which to me is probably the origin and I, like, of the fact that again, as much as I like to give white sass, if I were making a druid class, Wild Shape would be in there because I had a bunch of formative books when I read as a kid, like fantasy novels and shit, that had wizards turning into fucking animals, so it just feels really natural to me. But it wouldn't be such a core mechanic because I don't think of that when I think druid. I think cloistered, woods wizard, essentially.
Finally, the most recent addition, the Wildfire Druid. They get a bunch of fire spells. They get cool bonuses to healing and damage. A lot of relating to fire.
I like that it's healing and damage.
Yeah. That's cool. And they get a cool fire familiar, which they can use their wild shape instead of. Circle of Spores also can use spores shit instead of
like
wild
Circle
shape.
of Spores and Wildfire are the two I was talking about earlier. Basically, if you're making a Circle of Spores or a Wildfire Druid, you're probably not going to use wild shape. You're probably going to use wild shape charges for the shit.
Mm-hmm. And you would think that would mean that one of those was my favorite druid class because, oh, good, I get out of wild shape. But I'm not big on fire in general. Like I said, the spores is really, really specific. Something I'll probably play someday, but it really lends to only like a couple of concepts, and they're really close in style anyhow. I like the Twilight Druid. I think they have a lot of really cool options from like...
I could totally see that.
Yeah. And I really feel I like, you can make a druid who's like a real protector of nature, who goes out thwarting the undead, the ethical paladin or cleric of the druids.
Yeah. The undead are a violation of the natural order. Mm-hmm. I'll not be having that, thank you.
What do you think is your favorite subclass?
Honestly, land.
Land.
Yeah. It is, it shifts druid into a more spell casting focused thing, which I like, and I really like how flexible it is because they have like 5 options for bonus spell lists and that really refluff the circle really well. So you could choose just land druid and make like 5 or 6 separate characters who feel very different with just that one choice.
Yeah, it's nice, and that's why it's okay that I think there's only 2 druid circles in the core book, because Circle of Land gives you those options.
It has a bunch of different possibilities
for the domains,
and the possibilities therein make it my favorite because it's just so many options. What about look, I think everyone can guess, but what's your least favorite one?
It's Moon, and it's not just because it leans into the shape-shifting. I think that's a good idea, but it bottoms out. The last 2 circle features are just not good. I mean, the elemental thing is really
the elemental thing is good.
It's strong, and don't misunderstand me on that.
It's strong, but I feel like it doesn't follow the theme of Circle of the Moon.
Exactly. You are an animal, and you're better at being an animal.
Like, if you had that as a part of Circle of the Land, that would make more sense.
Yeah, that would be great.
You could turn into a kind of elemental that corresponds to whichever circle you picked. That would make more sense. It just doesn't fit the theming of Circle of the Moon very well. Honestly, my least favorite is also Moon, because it isn't very well themed. It starts out real strong. It doesn't ramp up as much as Shepherd does, but it probably starts out stronger and is stronger for a while. And it starts out stronger, it's real good until it just falls off a fucking cliff mechanically, and the theming is all over the place.
Well, and I think part of it is because your actual core Druid capstones, like the last two abilities you get, feed into Circle of the Moon really well.
Yeah, like, that's actually something that's really, really bears mentioning. I don't know, Archdruid is just all around good, but the one right before it, where you can cast spells in animal form, I know there are people who play other kinds of Druid who would get upset by this. I would have made that the Circle of the Moon capstone. Full stop. It would have come a little earlier, because I think you get that at what?
14 is when you're sub, and
that's 18th level. Happens. I would have made that the Circle of the Moon capstone, and no other Druid could get access to that. If you want to do spells and magic at the same time as an animal, you need to be the animal Druid. That just seems fair to me. Now, I understand mechanically why they wouldn't do that. Because they're already a better animal. Now they're a better animal who also is the only animal that can cast magic. That would make Circle of the Moon way too powerful. So, at that point, you gotta start asking, okay, then are we doing Wild Shape wrong?
And that's where I feel the biggest issue is. Let's finish cleanup here before I get into rant mode. How would you subvert a Druid?
That is an interesting question, because there's so many different ways. Like, they give you... Some of the circles are subverting a Druid. I would say Circle of Spores is a subverted Druid.
I would agree, yeah. And I think you could play a Circle of Twilight Druid as subverting a Druid. It's really easy to play an evil Circle of Twilight.
Yeah. But, like, they put it right there in the thing. Aside from just doing it fluff-wise as like... WoW Goblin.
Sure.
Exploiting natural energies with horrible machinery or something. And,
yeah.
There's not a wealth of ways in my brain and this probably is part of the reason I haven't played a Druid.
Well, and I think it is interesting and telling that, like, of the 7 classes, the 7 subclasses you have for Druid, literally 3 of them are subverting what you'd expect from a Druid. The Circle of Spores, as we said, the Twilight has got a really good option there for it. And Wildfire, which is not so much about, growing plants as burning them down.
It's the Cleric of Shiva I mentioned last week.
Right, exactly.
Accepting that destruction is a part of the natural order, and for a forest's health, occasionally there must be a fire.
Sure, and I think it makes sense.
Otherwise, the undergrowth gets too thick and it chokes out other life, and literally, some forests are designed to burn occasionally.
I think that makes sense, and I think that's a perfect example of subversion. But to me, it's telling in that their Druid thematics are a little off. Or maybe their design philosophy origin point is a little off, that 3 of those classes subvert the core idea.
3 of the 6. So half, or is it 7?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7.
So a little under half are focused on subverting the Druid, which just tells me there's not a lot of thematic space you're working with. Because Cleric had fucking 20 or something, and all of them felt like Clerics.
Well, and to be fair, like we said, in Circle of the Land, you do have a bunch of options for your spellcasting flavor.
Maybe it would have been better to, workshop some of those and turn them into separate circles.
How would you play a Druid? Let's say I'm starting a new campaign, as we always say, and I'm like, hey, buddy, I need you to play a Druid.
I would probably work with you a fair amount just to see what you were going for. In terms of why do you need me to play a Druid of all bloody things?
Just fucking do it.
I would either play a Circle of the Land Druid because it's my favorite. It's the one I like the best, and just honestly play someone very similar to the druid that the Beard, who's been on the podcast before, played in my campaign, of just a guardian of nature who has really good spells and occasionally turns into a giant elk. Just, I would
on
lean,
the button.
I would lean a little bit harder into druid actually than he did. Yeah. I would be like the person. I would be like a fucking elf hippie. I wouldn't pick a changeling because Lord knows I don't want to. Or I would literally play like semi-feral wild man moon druid and just really hope the campaign ends before level 14.
So, how would I play this? The funny thing is, as much as I'm upset and railing against Druid, it is because I've played 3 Druids in 5th edition. Out of all of the classes I've played, I think only Fighter comes close. I think maybe Fighter and Druid are an even keel.
And every time you play a Druid, much like every time you play a Warlock, you walk away disappointed.
Warlock is my fault and a limitation of our campaign. A mix of 50-50. Druid is Druid's fault. And we'll get into Warlock when Warlock's time comes. I know that's probably going to be next year at this point, but we will get there.
Despite the fact that we do forget sometimes, we don't plan on going anywhere.
Nope, we're always here. So I've played a couple of different kinds of Druids, and I've tried to stat up more since then. I want Druid to work because I have loved Nature Mage since before I started playing D&D.
It's a really cool concept.
Yeah, I used to play a Dark Elf in a multi-user dungeon back in day, and he did nature magic. I was really involved around it. He had a little snake familiar that was it was white. He was his friend. I thought it was really cool, and I ported him into an early D&D game, and he was wise, and he was like a sage, instead of the classic wizard kind of template. And when 5th edition, my first fucking 5th edition character was a druid, and I wanted to go for spellcasting, and I wanted to do a bunch of nature spells, and then I saw how much of my class's power was tied up in wild shape, which is antithetical to what I'm trying to do.
Honestly, if I were going to make... I think this is the biggest problem with druid. If you asked me to make a druid, not the class, but if you said, hey, I want someone who is the kind of motherfucker what would hang out at Stonehenge.
Yeah.
I would make a cleric.
Yeah.
I would make a cleric, and I would pick one of the many, many options for cleric domain that fits a nature mage. I think there's a couple that are literally just druid.
Honestly, Fey Warlock as well was probably a little closer.
Yeah, but that's what I would do, is I would make a cleric who just picks... I think there's actually a cleric domain that is nature magic. That's what I would do if you asked me to make a druid. Like, as the concept. If you ask me to make druid as a class, that's a different thing. And that, I think, is a problem. And it feels like more of a problem than it otherwise might, because in 5th edition, there aren't many classes I can say that for. There aren't many classes that don't do a really good fucking job of embodying their concept. Druid is one of them. They do an excellent job of being an updated version of the 3.5 Druid class.
Oh. They do a great job of being an updated version of the 4th edition Druid class.
Yeah. But they don't do an excellent job of being a Druid.
I am not this guy. I enjoyed 4th edition for what it was. I don't know that I'd ever play it again. But, like, if some guy I knew was like, hey, I want to run a game and I want to run in 4th edition, okay. That's fine.
I wouldn't. I don't want to play 4th edition again. It was boring. It's great to DM. I would DM 4th edition again. For a certain kind of player. But I would not play it again.
But it's not my top pick. It's not my favorite by any stretch. But 4th edition used a lot of MMO logic. It just did. And I believe part of that was taking Druid further away from what they were in previous editions of the game, up to and including 3.5, and making them more, I play World of Warcraft. As far as I'm aware, Druids turn into funny animals.
That's their whole shtick.
And, like, Wild Shape, for me, would have been... I think at this point I feel strongest about it could have been spells. It could have been Druid exclusive spells. It's not like we don't have spells. And then you go Circle of the Moon, or what the fuck ever you want to call it.
And it works like Circle of the Shepherd. Your spells that turn you into an animal are buffed. Because,
like, the difference we're talking about here, 8th level Wild Shape is when you get to 1 CR for
and that's as high as it gets.
If you're not Circle of the Moon. If you get to Circle of the Moon, it's down here. I gotta look at shit. It gets to max CR 6 at 18th level. And you get to max CR 1 at 2nd level.
So it's such a wild difference in terms of power scaling that it feels like a different class.
It does.
And honestly, I know this is D&D sin, so prepare yourselves. I hope your body is ready. I'd have turned Wild Shape into a different class. Yeah, I would have made a class that's centered around Wild Shape. In the same way, like, being a fighter centers around being a fighter, I would make a class that centers around turning into shit.
Well, or make a class that centers around being a nature mage, because I feel like you're taking two intrinsically conflicting ideas by your mechanical definition. And I don't disagree with that. I don't think you should be able to, by default, cast spells in your druid form. But you've got a great spellcaster class, and you've got a cool, I can give myself temp HP and be really strong class, and those concepts don't fucking go together.
Well, they go together thematically really well.
Sure.
Because, the ancient, reclusive sage who can turn into fucking ravens and fly away is an incredibly, that's a very core druid concept.
Sure.
But in the way 5th edition works, you're basically it's as unintuitive as multi-classing barbarian and wizard.
Yeah, pretty much.
You're locking off half of your class when you're using the other half of your class. There's no synergy. They work together thematically, but they don't synergize very well.
And the hit point buff thing is a part of the problem. Because you've got, even at a 1 CR thing, I mean, however many times a day...
Twice.
Yeah.
Starts as twice.
It increases as time goes on. You can drop, turn into a buffalo or whatever, and get a huge fuck ton of hit points that you can let the enemies chew through that has no impact on your normal hit points.
So it's...
But you can't fly or swim. Like, Druid as a whole...
I get the mechanical reasons for limiting flying and swimming speed at 1st level. Because mechanically, those are things that are hard to access before that point in the game.
Flying speed, I understand.
Swimming speed is a little weird.
A fighter who takes their fighting style, because of stuff that's come out after that, can take Mariner, and they've got a swimming and climbing speed.
Yeah.
A rogue, a bard, will get swimming or will get climbing speeds anyway.
That's just power creep, man.
Sure, it is. I just, we haven't come back and looked at this. They haven't come back and, tried to figure out what they're doing. And the fact that we had so many more subclasses of so many other regular core classes and so few of Druid comparatively, I feel is telling.
Yeah, it says that they don't have. I imagine every time they go back to try and make one, they go and they cringe at some of the choices they made.
They run into, I'm sure, the Wild Shape debacle. If it were a spell and you could buff it a Circle of the Moon, that'd be great. I think, and I only just thought of this 2 days ago because I recently purchased a t-shirt. Well, my girlfriend recently purchased a t-shirt for me with Vincent from Final Fantasy VII on it. Wouldn't it be cool if you could just turn into monsters like that? What if you were playing an undead-style druid who was, suffused with unlife, and their Wild Shape let them be a big, creepy zombie?
Turn into undead instead of beasts?
Sure. Or what the fuck have you? Monstrosities. Let me be an owlbear.
Yeah, that's much cooler.
Yeah, if you want to live in that place, and then you could still...
Again, that's why I would have made a class that sort of centers around turning into shit, and then the features would be what kind of shit can you turn into.
Yeah, And of course, there's the polymorph spell. There's ways to get this stuff. Don't get me wrong. I'm aware this is all possible. I'm just saying, I don't think it needs to be intrinsic to the druid. And I miss, for example, the option in 3rd edition to instead have an animal companion. To me, a druid is more a person that hangs out with a wolf they know. And Nature Cleric does that better.
To me, that's just a ranger.
Well, I mean, way more spells.
That's just a ranger to me. I disagree. Animal companion that feels like a ranger feature to me that druids have because some people don't like Wild Shape.
And I would love it as still an option. And I mean, and we didn't get it until supplemental years later.
You have it now. You have Wildfire Druid. Congratulations, you have an animal companion.
Here's your animal companion. It's fire.
Yeah, he's a mephit.
You know that element you love, white, fire? Oh, there you go, buddy.
Oh, stop. Scritch, 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 ice. Shut up. You're being precious, and you know it.
I'm delightfully precious, and everyone loves me. Like, comment, and subscribe if you hate me.
Oh, shit! This is fucking 3,000 IQ play.
I don't think Druid is a bad class. I don't think it fits as well together as a total package as any other class.
It's powerful. It's, when played well, probably the most powerful, or at least one of the most powerful classes in 5th edition. And it has some very powerful options in it. And it just isn't themed very well.
No. It's
janky. It's janky. Now, we're already at time, and I don't want to go too much over, but say you're making Druid.
Yeah.
And the word has come down from the High Lord, whoever is in charge, Merles or whatever his name is. I honestly don't remember. That they have to keep Wild Shape as a class feature.
Okay.
But here are the rest of the rules. They have to keep Wild Shape as a class feature. They have to be a full casting class.
Okay.
How do you fix this problem?
If I can't have it as a spell?
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy enough to make it a spell-like ability kind of thing. I don't like saddling. I would just re-fluff the subclasses. Wild Shape is your core casting. You use your core feature. Use it as a resource with more subclasses. Make more subclasses that give you alternates. That's the thing, is a lot of this can all be fixed by homebrew. Pretty easy, even.
Yeah, like, for instance, I've already fixed Circle of the Moon. Anybody ever takes a Circle of the Moon Druid in my campaign, we gonna talk about their class features.
But, it's not hard to fix. I just...
Why?
I shouldn't have to.
Yeah, like, in 5th edition, that's very rare that you have to.
Sure. Even Ranger, as much as people bitched about it...
Ranger's fine. Those people are wrong. I am... Like, get ready for the Ranger podcast, because I'm gonna fight the whole ass internet. Y'all is stupid.
Please note I like Revised Ranger because it's fucking cleaner.
Yeah, well, look, I'm gonna use Revised Ranger because it's just better, but the regular one's not bad.
But anyway, this just, I don't know. This is the WWE 2K20 of D&D 5th edition classes. Why did this make it past beta?
It's just, so much of it just doesn't, it's a puzzle, it's 2 different 1,000-piece puzzles that you put into a one box and then shook up. They're very nice puzzles, Brent, but they don't go together.
And it's like the only version of its option. Like, a ranger and a fighter occupy similar logical space. Even a paladin. A cleric and a paladin occupy similar space. A warlock and a wizard and a sorcerer.
A warlock and a cleric can all occupy very similar space.
The druid is the only druid. We don't have any other nature mages. Except for specifically a nature cleric, and that's like literally one subclass.
Or a ranger, which is a half-caster class.
Yeah, a ranger, is half-caster, and they're ranger spells. They're not druid spells. There's a huge fucking difference.
Yes, the druid spell list is good. The ranger spell list is ass.
Violently underwhelming. You have cure wounds, be happy about it. We have ranted on exactly as long as I thought we would about the druid and why they're not great. If I were rolling a druid, I would roll a twilight druid. I would probably go very, tribal, very, thinking like plains tribal or swamp tribal. I like swamps. I wouldn't mind playing a lizard folk again.
Yeah, that'd be good. Like I said, I would just turn into the skid. I would be the D&Dist D&D druid. Like, I would absolutely play it up because it's the only version that's fun. Because it's the only version of that class that class is designed to do well.
You know what? That's some deep insight. While as all other classes seem like they took a core concept of, holy man or fighting woman or whatever and said, all right, and then you guys pick all the options and play with this. With Druid, they went, all right, the core concept is you're a nature mage who turns into animals. That's the fucking core concept. Now figure it out. And you're like, well, that really limits what I want to do with my shit, friend. So this is weird.
D&D Druid is the only version that's fun. So that's the version I would play. That's about all I got. You?
That's all I got. Next week, Gauntlet time.
Woo!
Are you ready?
Everything's better when nerds talk about it.
Fuck it.